Welcome back. You're watching Public Forum, and today we are talking about the microfinance sector in India. Before we slipped into the break, a viewer asked us about the rate of interest in this sector. We know that the Malegam committee has recommended that a cap of 24% on interest on individual loans and all loans without collateral. 24% is the cap that it has recommended. The industry body, Microfinance Institution Network, has said that already institutions were moving towards this path, so there was not really this is nothing new in this. So, is the rate of interest a settled issue at least?
Well, I would say the rate of interest is probably not a serious issue because in any case, if there are no microfinance, moneylenders were charging. So microfinance is not charging more than that.
Okay.
So it is not a problem for the villagers for that. It is availability of the fund is far more important. How many microfinance institutions have spread all over the country and how much of the rural and small people capital they are able to provide as of today is a very tiny percentage. So there are still villagers and rural farmers going to the money lenders.
Okay.
It is microfinance success cases are mainly in the urban areas. In the pure villages, how many microfinance successful cases? Very few. Here and there are some, mainly well organized institutions. But you have the length and breadth of the country. Farmers are poor. So that is the problem that any regulatory body will face, the government will face. How do you bring a very successful microfinance in Bihar and Odisha, backward region? It's one thing to talk about in Delhi slums, because slums of Delhi earn their income from the prosperous rich people of Delhi. But in the backward regions of Bihar and Odisha, or in East UP, how do you make a microfinance successful? So you have to make some concession to the interest rate, but not allow them complete freedom.
Okay.
So the Malegam committee perhaps thought at the moment 24 is the ceiling is okay. Let them not pay more.
Okay.
But the bigger issue will remain. Malegam committee also cannot facilitate a mushroom growth of microfinance in those backward regions. You need a much bigger institutional reform.
Okay. Well, it's time for me to take another viewer who is on the phone line with us right now. We have Mr. Mayank from Gurgaon. Welcome to Public Forum, Mayank.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Please go on.
My question to the panel is, there have been many incidents especially from Andhra Pradesh, about MFIs using exploitative means to recover loans. So how you think that the government could intervene to check this practice of using forceful method to recover the loans?
Okay.
And what steps have been taken in this regard?
Okay. Thank you, Mayank. Thank you so much for your question. Sanjeev, would you like to take that up?
I don't know how the government can intervene because I really don't see how they can intervene. I mean, what I did hear from Andhra Pradesh was that there was the coercive methods were not violent, but they were very, a lot of abusive language used and so on, which in different social settings that has very different connotations. What can the government do? I really don't know, because actually in Andhra Pradesh the government runs its own microfinance outfit. There's a self-help group which they use state funds to support it. So maybe the government can do a better job there. So NBFC microfinance institutions don't exist.
Okay. So, Sanjeev, is the rate of interest a settled issue? Now, when the committee, the RBI committee and the microfinance industry body, if they are talking in the same language, if they are on the same platform, is the rate of interest a settled issue? Is it going to be a cap of 24% or somewhere near to that, not 30, 35 or 40% what we were hearing coming out from Andhra Pradesh?
I don't think it's a settled issue, and I think it's a very serious issue, not for anything else. It's a sort of issue that attracts a lot of attention and tends to deflect attention away from some of the problems that Professor Bhattacharya mentioned and other things that plague the entire system. I don't think it's a settled issue because I know for sure that the Ministry of Finance doesn't think a cap on the rate of interest is a good idea. If there is going to be a legislation for microfinance, the Ministry of Finance is the ministry that will have to shepherd it. You might recollect in 2007 they tried it. They tried to bring a legislation. It was unsuccessful, and it fell through largely on the account of the rate of interest because the Ministry of Finance didn't want a cap.
Okay.
some of the parties which were supporting the government from outside at that time wanted a cap, and I mean there just was no convergence there.
Okay.
I think it will be a serious issue when they talk about legislation.
Okay, so it will continue to be a serious issue. We have another viewer on the phone line with us. We have Mr. Satyavir Singh from Haryana. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Singh.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Please go on.
Sir, my question is with Dr. B.B.
Bhattacharya. Ji, kahiye.
Dr. B.B. Chattopadhyay.
Please go on.
Sir, my question is how we are comfortable with the individual finance or we are comfortable with the group finance. My question is this individual finance is, I think, this give more opportunity to the people. So my question is, Dr. Bhattacharya,
Okay.
that what is the scope of individual finance?
Okay. Thank you so much. Which model of financing is better for us?
You see, if you have collateral, individual finance will provide as much base to the microfinance. Problem is, people of that category don't have the assets. You see, when you go to commercial banks, you don't go for a group. It's all individual finance. It's based on the collateral. In the group of that level, poor, they don't have any assets. Now, originally we tried, for instance, remember, commercial banks gave 5,000 rupees in 1980s to buy a goat or a buffalo. Gross misuse, because you can't get it back, nobody has any assets, so nobody repaid. So Bangladesh Grameen Bank got that idea. This is called the social capital.
Yeah.
Individual do not have a capital.
A group will
Group
have.
of them together has.
Yeah.
So you tied that group. And since it succeeded in that country, the idea caught on with other countries.
Yeah.
We are now experimenting.
The idea won a Nobel.
But my suggestion would be, if an individual is able to provide sufficient creditworthiness collateral, microfinance institutions should be allowed to give them individually. If they are not able to, then they should be put together in the group. So flexibility could have been allowed, not strictly saying only group lending and not individual lending.
Okay, fine. Dr. Sharma, my understanding of microfinance model is that it thrives in economies like ours, where financial inclusion is at a premium, where we've always been trying for a financial inclusion, but that has not come about. Institutional finance is seriously lacking. So, in terms of long-term efforts, should our when we are already on the path of enlarging the cover of financial inclusion, providing extending institutional finance to as many people as possible, how will this sector won't it come into the path of that process of financial inclusion that we are talking about?
Yeah, this is good idea that we are seriously taking this financial inclusion, and in our last program also I have said that this financial problem is not related to the pocket, it relates to the mind. So let us work on the mind of the people. People are committing suicide not because of high rate of interest. They are giving much higher rate of interest to the local money lenders. So try to understand it's a problem of handling. If they are not tackling the things in an intelligent manner, there will be a chaos, the things will be messy. Try to work on their mind, then give them finance, or both the things can go together. If only you are giving few notes or few rupees to them, they cannot help much, and you are making their lives more hell.
Okay, so it's almost time for me to wind up. Sanjeev, in other words, is the microfinance sector, is the rapid growth of microfinance sector, is it helping our goal of financial inclusion largely, and what does the Malegam committee do to that?
It doesn't help all that much in our goal of financial inclusion, because it just deals with one small aspect of financial inclusion, that is loans. I mean, inclusion would mean a lot of other aspects, including a place to save, micro insurance, micro pension, whatever. And I don't think it helps all that much.
Okay.
What the Malegam committee does is, even that little bit of help that was coming through, which might be in the form of loans, I don't think it's going to make anything easier for them over there.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya, your final views.
We are a long way towards attaining goal of providing funds to poor and vulnerable segment of society. And as Sanjeev says, credit is only one element of social security. Protection, insurance against vulnerability, income, fluctuations. So many things are involved. So the Malegam committee is confined to one element. But even then, I think Malegam committee is a response to the suicides in Andhra Pradesh. Rather than addressing the broader issue, how do we make microfinance available in all parts of the country?
Okay.
So it is talking about a cap interest, this and that more, rather than concentrating on what kind of institutional mechanism will provide easy accessibility of the credit to all such people in the bottom age.
Okay, so while it does do its bit to help the sector, but it does not take care of the broader concerns, which is basically the goal of this sector. That seems to be largely the consensus on this panel that I have been able to zero down upon. Well, on that note, it's time for me to wind up. Sanjeev, Dr. Sharma, and Professor Bhattacharya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's all in this edition of Public Forum. Do stay tuned to Lok Sabha Television. We'll be back in yet another edition with yet another issue. Namaskar.